Hello, everyone. I'm just going to wait a minute. We have a lot of people still logging in at the moment, so we'll get started in a minute or so. Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Um, I would like to welcome you all to the Social Workers Confronting Racial Injustice Conference. I am Tawandra Rao-Kunzelo, an Associate Professor in the Sandra Rosenbaum School of Social Work at UW-Madison. And I'm happy you are all here for this breakout session, The Cheat Code, Navigating Systems Never Meant for Us, a strategy session for BIPOC resilience and reclamation. To share a visual description of myself, a brief one, I am a peanut butter colored Black woman with curly brown hair, wearing dark pearl earrings and a black shirt. And I'd like to again share our university's land acknowledgement. The University of Wisconsin-Madison and the Sandra Rosenbaum School of Social Work occupy ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation has called Dejop since time immemorial. In an 1832 treaty, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory. Decades of ethnic cleansing followed when both the federal and state government repeatedly but unsuccessfully sought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. The history of colonization informs our shared future of collaboration and innovation. Today, UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation along with the 11 other First Nations of Wisconsin. Now, I'd also like to provide just a few quick Zoom reminders. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on our conference website at a later date. To access this presentation, you are required to provide your name and email address. This allows us to log our attendees and email you information on CEUs for this presentation, which will be distributed via email at a later date. Your cameras and microphones will remain muted. We have a Q&A feature where you can submit questions for our presenters. Please know that due to the large volume of attendees, we may not be able to get to all submitted questions. Now it is my pleasure to introduce you to our two presenters, April Kigeya and Jaylin Stueber. April is a mother of four children and is the second vice chair of the Dane County Board and has a passion for working with children and families, underrepresented communities, and others who can't advocate for themselves. To that end, she is heavily involved in her community. In 2020, April was named one of Wisconsin's most influential Black leaders and was the first person of color to serve on the Middleton Police Commission and served as the co-chair from 2021 to 2022. She is currently attending Edgewood College, where she is a PhD candidate in business administration. Jaylin is a Madison, Wisconsin native who grew up on the East Side and is a Madison East High alumni. Jaylin is also a Pupil Scholar and ITA alumni. She earned her Bachelor and Master of Social Work from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Jaylin has always been passionate about working with high-risk populations, especially youth and young adults impacted by the criminal justice system, by helping them stay on the right path to success while also helping them achieve their short and long-term goals. Additionally, Jaylin, is extremely passionate about elevating the voices of BIPOC individuals and bringing them to the table to ensure they are represented and that their expertise is part of the conversations that impact decisions that are constantly being made about them. So now I will turn it over to Jaylin and April and ask them to just provide like a brief presenter visual description as well before they begin the session.
Sure.
Thank you both.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Hi, I'm April. Caramel colored skin, black hair. I'm wearing gold earrings and a pink shirt.
Hey y'all, I'm Jaylin. I would say I'm peanut butter colored, skin tone, black woman with some locks, wearing a black sweatshirt and then a black and white hat. I just want to say thank y'all for coming and joining us today. We're very excited to be here.
All right. Again, thank you all for being in this space. And I just want to, before we begin, I'd just like you to put aside anything that you're carrying into the space that may be heavy, that may potentially prevent you from engaging. I know we all carry a lot, especially being BIPOC individuals. So if it's possible, just kind of put that aside for the next 60 to 75 minutes or so, if possible. And while this session is not interactive, which is unfortunate, we do have the Q&A session or section. So if you can, at any time, if there's questions, if there's reactions, if there's feedback you'd like to give us, feel free to go ahead and do that at any time. We are more than happy to stop and engage with you all when you see fit. Also, please feel free to take care of yourself as you need to. If you need to step away at any point in time during the session, go ahead and do that. And with that, we'll begin. I'll turn it over to Jaylin.
All right, so how we like to start this up is just give a little bit about why we feel like this session matters, why we kind of are doing this specifically for this talk. We want to talk about why this is really important in the social work and justice center spaces. Specifically for me, representation really, really matters. Like we have to learn how to navigate these spaces and being relatable and seeing people that look like us in these spaces is oftentimes really helpful in order to create systems that are supposed to be for us and another way to help create better systems. Another really important reason why we're doing this session is to pay attention to burnout, right? We have to pay attention to the signs, especially within, human services and working with people, right? We have to make sure that we acknowledge the unspoken labors that we're going through, the emotional tolls that we're going through. And, we can't fill others' cups unless ours are full ourselves, right? Lastly, what's really important about this is we want to make sure we're taking time to name the game, defining what the system is and developing your own cheat codes. Shorthand, basically naming what we're going through with, white supremacy or, systemic racism, all these different systems that we deal with, and then figuring out the ways and strategies that we use to get through them. So that's a little bit about why the session is important. April, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add to that at all.
No, I think you covered.
Okay, great. So the next thing that we're going to get into is talking about what the cheat code is. So, what I figure is most people know what a video game is, right? Or if you don't, right, it's a game that you're playing and you need beat different levels, getting through different obstacles, right, throughout the game. Oftentimes, people talk about what, cheat codes being as something that helps you get through the game, get you through it quicker, helps you achieve those things a little bit faster. For us, we think about the cheat code as our survival strategies and unwritten rules and emotional labor adaptations that we develop to navigate these systems, right? That are not built for us to even begin with, right? I don't know about y'all, but in my experience, it's very challenging being a person of color, especially at like a high level, right? Because at the end of the day, historically speaking, it's just not, this system is not made for us. It's not what we're supposed to be, right? So oftentimes we're molding ourselves into the professionals that we are, right? But we have to figure out how do we survive, how do we thrive, how do we get through these spaces. Oftentimes I think about it like the different skins that we have to put on or the different tools in our toolbox that we use to get throughout the system.
So also something that we have to do as BIPOC individuals, we often have to code switch, right? To fit into systems not made for us. We're often at our jobs finding ourselves having to speak quote unquote proper to make sure that we're seen as educated. We often have to hyper prepare for projects or often have to come into spaces extra prepared. So for example, there have been times where I've had to show up to meetings, making sure that I had documents printed, policies pulled, extra things done just to make sure that I showed up in a space all extra prepared where I saw my white counterparts just show up and kind of wing it, right? Like there's these things that we have to do just to show up more no more than ourselves. And that's a cheat code in and of itself. And it's one of those things that like we have to we have to just do these extra things. And it's taught me that we're not allowed to come up unprepared. We're not allowed to show up human in word. Like we can't show up uncertain because then we're looked at as we're not trusted, we don't have the experience, right? We have to do the extra work. We have to go above and beyond. So now that we've named some of these cheat codes, now that we've kind of talked about we're what those things are, we're going to talk about how this framework kind of came to life. And it's not necessarily a theory, it's something that we experienced in a previous work experience that kind of shaped this that we're going to kind of share and kind of go into how this came to life for us. So we're going to give a real life example, so we're going to share a couple stories um, about how this came to life for us. So Jaylin, I guess we decided that we were going to call it how to pull a them on them, right? So we took something that was pretty tragic that happened to us and decided we're going to take the fruits of our labor and we're going to capitalize on it. So, Jaylin, you want to kind of start off on how we did that?
Yeah, so long story short, right? We experience different, racially, discrimination things that have happened throughout the school that we were working at, and, just experience different things that, definitely impacted mental health, definitely impacted, the way that I feel like we envisioned ourselves and how we felt as professionals, right? So ultimately, there was kind of a us versus them mentality around the space. And really, it was like admin versus teachers. And then, you do a little bit deeper dive into it, and it seems like it's a us versus them. But then when we question around the admin staff, it's like, no, we're good. Everybody's good. And then April and I, we were like, So we tend to be an issue, right? So this is a common pattern where me and April are often the problem, but nobody else. And so we ended up having a mediator come in, right? Because it was a staff versus admin concern, and it was very important that we figure out how do we get through this professionally, right? Because we can't serve these students if we can't connect as a staff. Ultimately, April and I really connected well with the mediator that came in, and we ended up meeting up with him outside of the school setting and came to him with some of our frustrations and kind of the fire that was lit in us through the experiences that we had. And we thought like, hey, we need to run our mouths and make some money off of talking about what we've done, because why should they benefit off of what we've done, the structures that we've put in place, and the way that we've handled ourselves to this situation. So ultimately, we got some coaching through him and came up with this framework, the cheat code, and ultimately decided, like April said, we're going to pull a them on them. Let's go ahead and talk about our experiences and let others talk about theirs, and just figure out a community and move forward and figure out how to make things better.
Yeah. And the crux of the issue at the school was, which was very unfortunate, was that Jaylin and I were the only two women of color in admin in the space. And we were very instrumental when it came to, so I was in charge of paying the bills. I was in charge of um, anything money related. Jaylin was in charge of like helping teachers when they couldn't control the kids, right? So when it came time for management of certain things, we were called on. But when it came time for us speaking our mind and wanting to question things, then we were the problem. So it was very interesting in how we were kind of put in play in the spaces and when we were the issue. And it was just very interesting in kind of how that worked. And there were a lot of different issues. Jaylin, I think it would be beneficial if you want to share the experience you had, I think your first week at the school. When you were new, Jaylin came a year after I had already been there, and something that she experienced just, I think maybe it was like your third day. And it kind of set the tone for kind of how the school year progressed.
Sure. So, the week started, and my position there, I was a behavior support and engagement counselor. So what that it kind of came to be was me going in, helping students when they're dysregulated, being able to take a break, walk away, help them calm down, get focused again, pay attention to, student and teacher relations, kind of help coach students and teachers on how to better interact with each other. And then last but not least, kind of like engage with families and students and, make sure that they're getting what they need. So throughout my process being there, I'm walking around the school, checking out different classrooms, engaging with students, kind of just sitting down, getting at their levels, right? And I'm kind of seeing this student kind of ripping up paper and dropping it in the teacher's hand. I'm like, ooh, what the heck is going on, right? And, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna address that a little bit later. After class, I bring students to the side. Hey, what's going on? Why would you do that? Don't do that, right? I don't know if it was because, I'm a little intimidating or what have you. I thought it was pretty fine. Went about it my way. Later in the week, the teacher comes up to me and says, hey, I got an email from a parent saying that, you kind of scared this student, so to speak, right? And essentially, the first week of the school, I heard from this teacher that she didn't want to meet to be perceived as a scary black woman, right? Which was just insane to me because it's like that was wild. I just started here. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to like not lose my job and address this. So let's like move forward, right? So these little microaggressions that are being dropped and little dimes that they're putting out here of like you don't belong here. But it's funny because as the school year progresses, I'm constantly being called, I'm constantly being which way, this way, all these different spaces with help and support that they need when students are, as they would say, unmanageable, right?
Yeah, so there were many experiences that we had. I had a lot of experience. One example I will give. So I was the chief financial and human resources officer for the school. Part of my job was to, pay the people that were there. So with that, you would think I would need to have their, have to see their information, right? One of the teachers there had a change in her 401k. She made a change in her deductions. And how it was set up at the time, they would have to let me know if there was a change so that I could go in and make that change. She didn't let me know. So like a couple months had passed and the 401k servicer was like, hey, April, this teacher made the change, but we didn't see it on our end. How come we didn't take it out? And I was like, oh, I didn't know because they didn't let me know. So I went to the teacher and said, hey, the servicer came and let me know that 2 months ago you made this change, but you're supposed to let me know so I can change the deduction on your paycheck. And she was like, oh, I didn't want to tell you that because that's personal information. And I was like, well, I'm the one that sees your paycheck and pays you. So like I need to have that information. So it's like there's a lot of things with other, pay related things with teachers that when it comes to me, like they didn't want to tell me, but they would tell the head of school. But the head of school is not the one that pays your, does your paycheck and does the deductions and all of that. But like when it's with me, they don't want to give me that information. So there's a lot of different microaggressions that Jaylin and I experienced at that school. That it was just it was very frustrating, and ultimately we both ended up leaving due to it because of the stress level and because it was a very toxic work environment for both of us. And so through that we learned that you know, we have a story to tell. We learned that this was one of the systems that was not meant for us. We tried to fight through it because we truly believed in the mission. We love the students, we love the school, we love the work that we did. But at some point, you have to decide where does that, where do you stay in a space that's not meant for you, that keeps pushing against you, that's harming your mental health, that's harming your physical health. Like, where do you draw that line and move somewhere else? And because of that, we were able to, turn this into the talk that we're doing now. So that's kind of a few examples. We might come up, we might talk about some more later. Um, but yeah, that's just how we learned that our experiences just were not, they just shaped us in a way that, it was not a healthy situation for either of us at the time. Um, so yeah, Jaylin, do you have anything else? The storytelling that you wanted to share? No? Okay. All right. So now I'm going to talk about the toll. So this is kind of some of it, right? The physical toll. Many of us have learned how to regulate the room or our workspaces before we even learned how to regulate ourselves or regulate our body, which is unfortunate. Um, and this is just something of how it's something that we do naturally, unfortunately, and especially as BIPOC folks, we've just learned how to do just as almost like a coping mechanism, right? It takes a toll on a lot of us, emotionally, physically, and mentally. It's emotional translation. It's anticipating folks' reactions. Like at work, it got to a point with my boss, I was anticipating if how he was gonna respond to certain things. Was he gonna show up? Like it was a lot. It's carrying institutional tension so others don't have to. And this just it's invisible labor that takes a toll on us like nobody else. And it's no surprise that Black women, over 50% of Black women over the age of 20 have high blood pressure or heart disease. And it's literally killing us. And statistics are there to show it. Um, there was a point when I was on the county board. I'm not on the county board anymore, but when I was on the county board and in this position, I had a stroke as a result of the stress, right? Like it's, and my counterpart, who was also on the county board, she had a heart attack because of stuff we were going through, death threats during the jail debate. Like it was a lot. And it shows that stress is the number one killer for Black women. So we have to learn how to take care of ourselves. And I know I'm not the greatest person to do that, to say that because I'm not good at self-care, but like we have to learn how to do that because it's not good. It really takes a toll. And if this feels familiar to any of you, it's because that you guys have learned how to do this the same way. It's so easy, it's so much easier for us to take care of others and ourselves. And those of you who are social workers, I'm sure you know that, right? Because your job is literally to take care of other people. So you can probably resonate with that. Um, Jaylin, you kind of want to talk about the bridge and connect some of those to the social work culture?
Absolutely. So I am a social worker myself, right? Social work alum from UW. So, you know, April does a really good job of talking about, like, at the end of the day, the things that happen to us take a toll on us. I mean, we know that just in general. You don't have to be a social worker to understand that. That's why I really appreciate this kind of conference, right? Because anybody can come here, anybody can get the information that they need to become better, right? Ultimately, I think nobody really likes to talk about the skeletons that are in the closet, right? We like to beat around the bush, and it ultimately causes more harm, right? We have to really step up, those of us who are in these human services positions, and have kind of this pull to shift people's opinions, right? To let people know what folks are going through, right? And really hold our leaders accountable, right? Something that we often experienced at Winger was like, hey, we hear one thing in private about how we're going to be supported and how we should speak up for this and how this is a really good idea and this is a really good policy and procedure to put in place. And then it comes down to implementation and meeting settings, and now we're having completely different discussions, right? So it is very important that we're having these hard, uncomfortable conversations. We have to have the hard conversations in order to address the root of the issues. We cannot move forward if we continue to sweep and put things under the rug, right? Another thing that's important to talk about is that oftentimes people that are in these fields, we're overworked, we're underpaid, we have heavy caseloads. We have no time to rest, right? A lot of us have multiple jobs. A lot of us have families. A lot of us just don't even have the time to sit down and like eat some food during the day, right? So it's just really important to understand the system that you are in. It's very important to understand what it is that you're going to be up against, right? Because ultimately, we can sit here and we can give you advice. We can tell you what our experiences are, but at the end of the day, we can't be in your shoes because you're the one that lives it, right? We can relate and we can guide you, but you have to develop your own cheat codes, right? You have to figure out what you're going to use in order to go from surviving to thriving, right? And then most importantly, I think, you want to avoid that compassion fatigue. So, you have to look to your leaders, right? Leadership is going to play a really big role, right? Without the right leaders in place, without the right chess pieces in the right spaces, you cannot make any change, right? So if you have a leadership position, if you have the opportunity to stand up and elevate people's voices, you got to step up and do so, right? We can't get anywhere if our leaders aren't holding people accountable for the things that we're supposed to be doing. And, this is a good time, I think, to, if you have any experiences you want to share in the chat or the Q&A, if there's anything that you guys are feeling right now, any comments that y'all want to share, this would be a really great time to go ahead and put that in there as well.
There
April, feel
are
free to add any
many.
other connections that you.
Can I read the two that are in there real quick? So, someone said it's unhealthy for everyone because it's skewed and a harmful model for students. And then another comment says it's so crazy that the systems that are most front and centered in the work that mostly direct and that mostly that most directly impact the most vulnerable amongst us, education, health, human services, judicial, etc., are the most resistant to addressing the obvious, racist, toxic, and harmified practices that they are aware exist. Yep.
Anyone else have? Great. April, you want to go ahead and read that one too? You're muted.
Sorry. BIPOC have been trained to take care of others in every facet of our being. Who then takes care of us? That is so true. No one. And then we don't even do a good job of taking care of us. Right?
Another comment in there was many spaces are so challenging to Black women. We are over policed, to say the least. Yeah, I can relate to that, right? Because we heard a term that we weren't ready for, right? When we were engaging at the Racial Justice Summit, and somebody had talked about tone policing. I myself have my own experiences with me being the loud and proud Black woman that I am, right? I have no problem going into a space and stirring that pot because at the end of the day, if we ain't stirring the pot and making change, what are we there for? It doesn't make sense, right? So, there was a situation at the school where we had a meeting, and apparently I got a little bit passionate. Those of y'all who know me, y'all know what's up. I get a little, little loud sometimes. But oftentimes I think that it's, when you're passionate about something, you're going to use your voice, right? So I was told because I got a little bit passionate about, some contract things that I needed to apologize because I was very frightening and scary to one of my coworkers. And I just was like, y'all gotta be kidding me. I'm not gonna apologize because I'm emotional and y'all can't handle the same things that you guys do, right? It's again pulling the them on them. They want to cry, I'm gonna cry. They want to yell, I'm gonna yell,
And the
right? You
crazy
got
thing
to do the
about that
things, you got
was
to have them look in the mirror, right?
is that you were upset and like on the verge of tears, but you made the other person upset. It's like, what? So you can't be in your feeling? Like, it was so crazy. Like something was happening to Jaylin and she was experiencing like not essentially not being taken care of at work and she was upset about it. But then the other person was like, well, you need to apologize to me because you being upset made me upset. Like, are you kidding me? It was ridiculous. I'm gonna read these other
Just
two.
wild.
Not a question, but thanks for such a validating experience. Oh, you're welcome. What do we do when leaders are chosen to uphold the status quo? Qualified people are not put into leadership positions because of their willingness to have the uncomfortable conversations. That's a challenge, right? Like yeah, we see that all the time, all the time.
I mean, not to mention too, what really frustrates me the most, if we think about our hiring processes, right? We specifically see in the system that the application process, even just the name on your resume, can deteriorate whether you are getting a call back or not, right? So if we think about it, one of the biggest things that I always push for in organizations when I have a chance is how can we adjust our hiring processes? How can we take away the rubrics, take away these like formal questions and start to get to know people, right? People are often trained to answer these questions a certain way. So that's another thing. I'm really appreciative of this question, this comment, right? The people that are supposed to be in the job are oftentimes not even able to get their foot in the door due to backgrounds, due to lack of education, due to XYZ, right? We're not even able to get into these spaces due to the system itself.
Well, and I was told so like I work part-time as a case manager for Sonder Cove and I'm applying for full-time jobs and I was told recently that my resume is not believable. Like my experience, they don't think like it's real. I'm like, what? So I have too much experience and that's a roadblock for me. So I'm like, well, that's stupid. So it's either you have too much or you don't have enough. Another experience, or another comment, I found myself apologizing to white counterparts. Is it a form of self-hatred? It's like why are you putting yourself down to appease others, right? I don't think it's self-hatred. I think it's you maybe are trying to fit in the box, potentially. Essential to speak truth to power. Thank you for sharing real life examples. First, I would like to thank you both for your bravery and courage. Gaslighting and microaggressions are very real. What's more interesting is the bullying and jumping on the bandwagon that occurs. Yes. White fragility question mark. Yeah, that occurs and that we experience that a lot. Like the white tears that we saw at work was ridiculous. And it's like they want to make you feel bad. And like Jaylin said, if you're gonna cry, I'm gonna cry. We'll both be crying. Like why 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 are you gonna cry because you're oppressing me? What are small ways to combat a work culture that wears down our ability to speak up for ourselves and the most vulnerable we serve within our communities? I'm feeling overwhelmed with beginning to process of taking better care of myself than to better serve those I work with. It's a good question. Um, do you, I don't know, maybe you can respond to this in the chat, whoever wrote that. Um, do you have support at work if you were to have, like if we were to give suggestions that your leadership would be able to support you in that? Because you said, what are small ways to combat a work culture that wears down your ability to speak up for yourselves? So is it that you speak up and you're shut down, or you just don't feel safe speaking up, I guess I would ask. Jaylin, do you have anything to respond to that one?
I struggle this one, y'all, because I think one of my biggest strengths is my mouth. I think one of my biggest weaknesses is my mouth, right? It gets me in the door, but it also gets that door shut. I think at the end of the day, you have to, again, I think it's really down to leadership, right? Leadership is going to dictate what the culture is going to be, right? Those who are in of managing employees are the ones that are going to set the tone for expectations, right? So I think that what's really helpful is organizations that are paying attention to their professional development, right? What are you doing to one, just because we're black doesn't mean that we're educated and that we know what's going on. We still need to train and refresh ourselves. So that's one. Also, what are we doing to make sure our allies are continuing to be good allies, right? And then overall, across the organization, are we making sure that our values and our missions are in alignment with who we are as employees and who are we serving? Are we mirroring what we're doing, right? So I think that the work culture is going to really come down to like who is in charge of helping set that tone, who's in charge of keeping that tone.
Another comment is it was probably their guilt. Our district does a great deal of work to address this, yet it ends up hiring the white applicant. I hear this a lot, right? A lot of people say, oh yeah, we hire, we have diverse clients, please apply, and then that's not who they end up hiring. Black women tears make people uncomfortable, but that's the point. Let them be uncomfortable. They are used to us being the caretakers. White women cry and the world stops to take care of them because this is so foreign that Black women need the same care. Our tears are viewed as anger because that reinforces the comfort of the majority culture. That is very true. But again, I think, and this is something that I'm just starting to learn since we left Wingra, is that why are we so comfortable making them comfortable, but we're so uncomfortable being comfortable in ourselves, right? Like pull a them on them, just like we talked about. So so what it makes them uncomfortable. When we do make it into positions of power, our qualifications are always questioned. Yep, that's what I was talking about earlier, as if imposter syndrome wasn't already a thing. Yep. Not to mention that for some of our white peers get hired on quote unquote potential and the whole system gets disregarded while we can't get our foot in the door or need documentation just to justify our experience. Thank you for sharing suggestions on helping these notoriously privileged populations to recognize the double standards. Unfortunately, the system was built this way. Like it's working how it's supposed to. So I don't know, how to integrate the system other than just to like keep pushing towards it, right? Like you got to go against the dam to break it. We just have to keep trying to fight against it. I don't like we as a culture have to do it. There's not really like one easy fix. Jaylin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. My social work brain always thinks about that upstream thinking, right? There's this ideology, right, where we have these babies that are in the water, and we're like, what the hell? Why are these babies in the water? What's going on? We have to save them. We have to save them. But then at some point, somebody has to stop and say, these babies are still coming. Where are the babies coming from, right? We have to go up the stream and we have to tap into oh, it's this place. And we have to go into where the source is, right? We have to stop being so reactive and start being proactive in how we go about our business.
Another comment, oof, when white women cry. Another one, oof, people often conflate discomfort with unsafe. That's true, especially in white spaces. I appreciate you talking about your experience because BIPOC are brought into spaces that center whiteness and white supremacy culture and the people in that system, particularly those in power and unable and or unwilling to center processes that allow for our full range of emotions and humanity, and instead ask BIPOC to turn into pretzels to center white people's comfort. Yes. Yeah, we're not doing that here. During my first internship as a young professional, I was encouraged to integrate DEI methods into community building practices and was faced with the black backlash of white supremacy reactivity. I was faced with the real threat of white supremacy culture violence and was not protected by leadership. In the end, I left after 3 weeks in order to protect my safety. Wow, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm glad you were able to leave though, because sometimes it's hard to leave. Like Jaylin and I, we were getting paid probably the most we've ever gotten paid at any job. Like really, really good money. And and we left. Like it was, yeah, we left because it was not good. So it's definitely hard to
Y'all,
leave.
I don't play about my coins. And it's just like at some point though, it's like when you got to put yourself first and your mental health, like the money will come, y'all. The money will always come, but your health will not. Once we start allowing these things to creep in, we see bigger and better things, right? You know, this too shall pass. So like I think at the end of the day, like I get it, we got bills to pay, but you gotta put yourself first. There's a difference between making reckless decisions and there's a difference between investing in yourself for the future.
There are a few folks I trust, but unsure of leadership. That's unfortunate. That's a theme that I've heard before too. Another one says, thank you. Another one says, I do not feel safe speaking up because it's a new role and I'm trying to gauge where and with whom I will actually get support from. I hear that. I wonder if your organization has like an employee, I forget what it's called. UW, when I worked at UW, they used to have one like an employee assistant something. I don't know how big your organization is, but I don't know. They might have something like that that you could speak to anonymously or, just to get a gauge of kind of, some sort of support because I hate for you to feel like you can't speak up, but then also have to like be in a toxic space for a long time either, you know? Can you share some self-care strategies where my intent, where by intent no real change is desired? Oh, I'm not a good person for that because I don't practice self-care like I'm supposed to. Because my therapist gets on me about that. Jaylin, do you practice self-care? I mean, I know what you're supposed to do. Like, Jaylin, you unmuted. Go ahead.
Um, April, you go to therapy, you write books, you engage with your children, you go and you do things. So you
I
say
asked
you don't
about
do
you.
so, but that's the thing. So I think that's my point, right? Oftentimes we think of self-care as like this really scary big topic that has to be so big, right? I personally think self-care can be as big as like I know I need my cup of coffee this morning. I'm go get my cup of coffee. Or I know that I really enjoy getting my haircut, so I know I'm going to prioritize getting my haircut. You know, it's really just taking time to stop and recharge, whatever that looks like. I mean, I am not a pro at it. I am far from perfect. I need to do way more self-care for sure. But the way that I really engage I mean, like even just listening to that one song I repeat for the whole day, just having that personal concert in the car, right? It's the little things that you can do for free that are great, right? Binge watching TV, reading your favorite book, all I recommend is that thinking about the things that you really enjoy, stop, take a second to do it. I mean, even just taking 5 minutes a day to get up and take a walk, get up and take a breath, just focusing on you. So those are some of the self-care things that I think of, right? Just thinking about the things that you would normally do for fun and just prioritize that.
Okay. All right, I'm going to pause here on the Q&A just so we can get through a little bit more of our content and then we'll come back to that. But y'all keep putting comments and reflections in there and I'll come back to it in a little bit. Jaylin, it's still on you. Number 5.
Yeah, I was so what we're about to do now we're going to talk about, I like to say, from surviving to thriving, really, thinking about this shift with intentional choice, right? When you get out of the survival mode and you start to be able to recognize who you are and whose you are, right? You begin to become intentional about the things that you do, right? It becomes a lot clearer and a lot easier to reflect, right? A lot of people sleep on the fact that when you're stressed out, like you can't think, you can't sleep, you can't eat, right? So how on earth would you expect if you're stressed out at your job, right? If you're stressed out with what you're doing, how are you going to be successful? How are you going to do stuff, right? So it's really important to really think about these different things that we're talking about, right? Like we knew it was time for us to leave because at the end of the day, ain't nothing need to be forced, right? You have to put you first. Something that I really, really enjoyed when we went, or what we've heard from different participants at a different conference was this ideology of the crabs in the bucket, right? What I want people to avoid is when you start getting into these high level positions, like, let's not gatekeep. Don't just stop it there. We often see like resources go away so quick, and the same organizations fighting for the same thing. Like, you don't want to go and pull people down just to get up. Like, that's not how you want to do that, right? Like I had mentioned earlier, you want to pay attention to what you're doing, like playing a game of chess, right? You want to have the right players in the right spot, right? Ultimately, the experiences that we have and the perceptions that we hold is going to influence the way that we fundamentally how we show up, right? How we are molding ourselves as professionals. So you have to pay attention, right, to the strategies that you're developing and that you're using, because if you don't stay sharp, things are gonna get more and more challenging.
I just want to circle back real quick to one thing Jaylin just said about recognizing when it's your time to leave, when knowing when it's your turn to leave. So we really struggled with, when we're gonna leave, and then we announced when we were leaving, and then at that at that meeting, it's funny now, but it was not funny then at all. Um, our boss was distraught and, said you should think about it. Like, why don't y'all stay until you find something else? And then, other coworkers are crying. And then Jalen, I don't know if it was the next week. I don't remember. But our positions were posted then before we were even gone. And we were like, what? So I thought you wanted us to stay until we found something else. But then they posted our jobs. But it's funny because to this day they still haven't found replacements for us. So clearly that's a sign. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so ironic. So next we're gonna talk about kind of survival mode, how our survival mode kind of comes from discernment. And when we talk about discernment, we're asking ourselves, like, is this mine to carry? Is it urgent? Is this even about me? And I think we oftentimes do this at work and probably maybe even in our personal lives, right? Like we tend to overcompensate. Like, well, let me just take on this extra project. Let me just help my coworker with this. Let me just do that. Like, stop and think, like, why am I doing this? I'm not getting paid for it. I'm not going to be recognized at the team meeting. I'm not going to be like, why are we going above and beyond? Why are we doing these extra steps, right? So think about that the next time you want to step up and go above and beyond at work because you're carrying extra stuff that's not yours to carry and you're going to be stressed out. And I know you want to be the good team worker. I know you want to be be seen because I think that's just what we do. It's innate. Like that's just who we are as people, right? But is it worth it at the end of the day? Just, think about that because this can lead to creating healthy boundaries for ourselves. And it's just going to be better off for you in the end because again, you're not gonna get that. I mean, maybe you will. Maybe you are in an organization where you are recognized, and that's great. But in my experience, or that has not been my experience, I should say. That has not been my experience. And some of the other BIPOC folks that I've spoken with, that's not their experience either, right? We do all this, we go above and beyond, we expect not even a pat on the back or extra money, but a thank you or a recognition, and we don't get it. And then it's like, well, why am I doing all this for? Because I'm a good person, I have a good heart, but then at the end of the day, it's like, damn, they didn't even say anything. But then Susie Smith over here is getting the extra, kudos and being recognized, and you're like, but I did more than she did, and I'm not getting the extra like at Wingra this person got extra money added on to her check because she was doing a little bit extra work. But I'm like, I'm doing three positions and I don't but okay, all right, whatever. So yeah. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about some internal reflection. So since we're not engaging in person today, which is sad for us because our other presentations we've done have been interactive. So maybe next time we can be in person. We want to offer a moment of internal reflection. So you don't have to take notes or anything, but just think about like what comes up for you. So what has come up for you this afternoon? I know some folks have shared through the Q&A, and we really appreciate that. I love the interaction, and I'm going to read a little bit more. How did you feel about it? And as you were feeling something, did you push back at it? Push back at all? Did you start to feel something and then be like, oh no, that's not me? Did you kind of like go against your gut, right? And here's the thing about feelings, oftentimes, and I'm guilty of this. Like you'll start to feel a certain way in your body, but your words will say something else. You'll say you're fine verbally, but your body's saying you're not fine. You either have a stomach ache, you have a headache, your heart is racing, right? There's other things going on. Like your body does not lie. Your body keeps score. Have you guys heard that term? Your body keeps score. Your body definitely keeps score. You have tense shoulders, your back hurts, but you're like, no, I'm good. Even if you're not telling somebody else you're good, you're saying to yourself, you're anxious about something, but you're saying you're fine, but your body is not is telling you that you're not. So during this time, I'm just going to read a few more of our Q&As. So have you ever seen a champion consistently in competition mode? Curious to hear your thoughts on WAHY BIPOC persons, especially Black women, are frequently perceived to be a threat. I don't know. Jaylin, have you? You ever seen a champion?
I don't know that I've heard of the WAHY.
Yeah, I don't either.
But you know, I mean, that's that crabs in a bucket thing. I feel like it's like, you know, we're constantly, it's almost like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the Hunger Games, like the ideology of like these spectators that are watching us fight each other back and forth, right? It's
Mhm.
like that system at work watching us do what we do, right? So, I mean, that's just kind of how I feel. I think that if you think about historically speaking, Black and brown people always been perceived as a threat. And then if you think about Black women on the bottom of the barrel, they're as low as you can go. What Tupac say, you could, you know, the Black woman is the most disrespected, most not sought after person, right? So it's not a surprise that they've always flipped the narrative for us to be a threat. Our tears, our anger, our frustrations, no different than anybody else in the space, but because of the color of our skin or the backgrounds that we have and experiences that we come from, right? I mean, it just to me it makes perfect sense. Like April had mentioned earlier, this system ain't broken, y'all. It is designed and it is working exactly how it is supposed to every single day. That's why we talk about dismantling the system.
I've had one of my clients speak up for me when they saw I was being racially discriminated against. I've also had another client have to confirm that I was a provider due to the other provider not wanting to engage with me because of the color, and she seemed embarrassed after the client had to justify who I am. Wow, that's crazy. That reminds me of when I was a theft and fraud investigator for Target, and I went up to one of my stores in Milwaukee, and at the time we were all wearing red and khaki, and the police came in, and I was the only Black person there. Everybody else was white. Police came in and they came right up to me and they're like, "So what did you take?" And I was like, "No, I'm the investigator. This is the person that stole." It was crazy. Um, I'm a young social worker, just started my first professional career in CPS. I'm the only POC, I'm Hispanic, on my team and the only POC in the family services unit. What advice do you have for young POC professionals navigating being a social worker for a government entity? Recently, I felt like I'm betraying my people by being in this job. Oh. Jaylin, you want to speak on that, being a social worker?
You know, it's interesting that you should say that, right? Because I feel like at the end of the day, like, you know, I always struggle with ethical dilemmas, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm here to serve my people, right? And there's just things I'm going to tolerate and I'm not going to tolerate, right? And at the end of the day, it is a challenge, right? Because as a provider, there are certain rules and regulations that we are supposed to follow, right? And oftentimes it can make it a little challenging when you're trying to build rapport and trust with your people because you have to really be mindful and you have to learn these cheat codes. You have to learn how to speak the language of the system, right? You have to learn how to, for example, as a case manager, write your notes that reflect your client well without like bashing them and making them feel a type of way. So like I feel that 100%. Like every now and then I do feel like I'm going against my people, especially if it's a sticky situation where I need to like, for lack of better words, if someone's being unsafe, I gotta snitch on them. I gotta let somebody know to make sure they get the help that they need. Sometimes I do feel like I'm going against my people for sure.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing. When the systems are already set to go against you, how can we thrive and push against the odds? It's so tiring to go the extra mile just to feel seen. It is tiring, but it's like the work never ends. I feel like we just have to, unfortunately, that's who we are, right? We just have to keep fighting every single day. Allyship is important. The labor should not be ours to educate others on the issue. That itself is tiring. Yep, I agree. It is. And I stopped doing that. I got an inbox last week from a white person that I used to work with. And she she asked me, she said she was gonna go to Minnesota for the protest, and she asked me what what stuff she should use to like help with tear gas. I was like, I don't know. And she's like, well, I'm just asking because I know you were really big in the protests here during George Floyd. I was like, like that's not my job to tell you. Like, the hell? The key for me is to know and understand the players at each level before I take action and speak up. Yep. Interesting to see that social workers are often perpetuating these malicious practices and behaviors. We shouldn't assume that because we know better, we will do better. What is the impact of the intersection of mass queer identity with Black womanhood in this context? What do you think, Jaylin?
Unfortunately, because I didn't, it's probably been a little while since the context of the question. It would be great if that person wanted to, give us a little bit more about the question.
When it
If it
was
was for me specifically, yeah, it would be a little bit more
okay.
helpful. That person feels brave to
Okay.
go a little deeper in it.
Live in your truth always. I hold a mirror to the ways that white coworkers are acting out their privilege in a space. I tell them to hold their tears and change their actions. I love that. Thank you for sharing your experience. A strategy my current work culture is using is finding allies, strategizing underground in the non-work spaces, and stepping forward as a group to question inequalities, racial injustices. White supremacy culture is embodied when we stay silent. So true. The key for me is to know and understand the players at each level. Oh yeah, so that one. Employee assistance program. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Thank you. Any good books or trainings that you appreciate to provide agencies to become more self-aware and to make steps into creating spaces where BIPOC folks feel safe? Um, we haven't really looked in, I'll speak for myself. I haven't looked into any books or trainings for agencies. We just are talking based off of our personal experience and kind of what we've done, but I don't know if you know of any in particular.
So, through the county, any Dane County workers, there's a lot of free trainings that you can get access to. I think the UW-Madison does a buckets training, kind of like the holes in the bucket analogy, where you fill the hose, cover the hose, what have you. Is a really good training that you can check out. Anything in relation to emotional intelligence is going to be really helpful. And then anything I think in relations to learning more about intersectionality or learning more about like people in interaction, right? You just being able to know how to engage with people is going to be really important.
Okay. Jaylin and April, we see you, we love you, and we appreciate you. When will America recognize that we are human and our Black tears matter and have meaning too? Yes. Great ideas and so doable and being intentional and honest. I spoke up against my leadership and my organization, and even though my coworkers agreed with what I did, they understandably were afraid of losing their job. Leadership told me that I had to practice self-care and improve my work skills so I could get over my what? So I could get over my feelings of discomfort with the organization. Wow. What we do when we, what do we do when there are not systems of support embedded in our organizations? Most nonprofits do not have resources to have those supports embedded. I would say find your people, right? Find a community of folks that you can talk to outside of work. Because unfortunately, yeah, if it's a nonprofit and it doesn't have that sort of support system embedded in it, then you need communities to surround yourself with. So, folks like us, friends, people in the area that you can lean on outside of work would be my suggestion. I'm a queer man of color who spent the majority of his professional life as a manager/leader in a large healthcare organization where the leadership team was majority white. Sometimes I was the only person of color. There was little to no support for managers, leaders of color to be supported in the work it takes to supervise/lead white folks and to thrive. The amount of violence that was happening was endless. Racist and homophobic jokes, unacknowledged microaggressions, and straight up aggression. Being moved from a role because of a white person in power was unhappy with me, etc. It went on and on. I think the needs and experience of leaders of color often goes unrecognized. I'm sorry that happened to you. Yeah, that's terrible that continues to happen in this space. Someone said, "Can you say those again?" But again, I'm not sure what that refers to. So if you could put in the chat specifically what you would want repeated, then we can do that for you. It's important to know and define your own self-worth and value. Um, I have been looked at as a threat, especially being a Black woman from Detroit here in Madison. I move a lot different. I've watched people hold on to their values even when I'm in a professional atmosphere. It's their game. We've got to learn to know their rules if you're going to be in their game. Yep. And that's where the pull of them on them comes from. Got to play their game. Yep.
That's that cheat code culture, right? That's that figuring out that when you watch and you pay attention, right? It's like that prey versus, being preyed on, kill or be killed, right? You got to pay attention to the people, right?
There's just a few more. To the Hispanic POC, look at the policies and practices, teach your folks the system and the rules. My biggest reflection during this session is how many microaggressions that haven't been addressed. It's fine until it's not. There isn't such a thing as micro, it's simply just an aggression against me. Any self-care/burnout books to read? I'm sure there's a
Hey,
lot.
April.
Yeah.
Well, we only got 3 minutes before we do the Q&A. There was it's the three things you said related to discernment was what the three things that wanted to be repeated.
Oh, okay. Oh, we talked about, is this mine to carry? Is this urgent? And is this even about me?
I
So,
gotta read this one. I like this one. I didn't see diversity in my classes and relaunched an infinity group for students impacted by immigration. Creating community is key. I also found more support from faculty members than from our own administrations within the building. There will always be people in your corner, just need to find them. I really appreciate that and thank you for sharing that. That's truth. That's facts.
someone put Rest to Resistance is a good book. Jaylin, do you want to close out then?
Yep, so we are coming to the end of our presentation portion. We'll bleed a little bit into the Q&A. This will be a good time to start thinking of if there's any last comments, questions, any last things that you want to talk about or, ask. This will be a good time to start putting those things in the Q&A. So overall, what we talked about today was the cheat code, right? In the system and figuring out what kind of strategies that we need to, use in order to make it through, right? At the end of the day, there's three big things that we want you to take away, right? We just want you to know that there is a framework that names these things, right? We've came up with it, right? We think it's called the cheat code, right? We discussed the unspoken emotional labor and survival strategies that, BIPOC professionals need to navigate these systems, right? The end of the day, what we're doing here is we're naming the system, right? We need to be aware of what is going on in order to move accordingly. The next piece of this, right, is paying attention to the tools that we're using in order to be intentional and keep focused, this, wellness centered action, right? At the end of the day, these are the cheat codes. These are the strategies that you need in order to make it out here, right? In order to beat this game. last but not least, right? We ultimately want you, if we would have been in person, this would be a little bit more easy for us, but we want action, right? We want you to think about what have you heard here today? What are the strategies that you've liked? What are the strategies that you use by yourself, right? What are the things that you can take into your communities and make them better? What can you take back to your organizations? What, as you, as an ally, can take, right, to become better and do better, right? And that, those are the things that we're hoping you take away from today.
So with that, we will open it up to any questions. I know you guys have been real active with your reflections and feedback. Are there any questions that you all have for us? Or just any more reflections or just feedback that you guys want to provide?
And not sure if that person is in here that asked about the mass queer, because I had wrote down earlier too, what is the impact of the intersection of mass queer identity with Black womanhood in this context? If you are still on here too, I would love to know a little bit more. I'm happy. I'm assuming that was for me. I'm happy to answer more if I can get a little bit more context on there.
I'll read the someone wrote, one of my cheat codes as a clinical social worker and Mexican brown male in this world has been employing four rules of engagement with people. Number one, listening to understand, not to respond. Number two, practice perspective talking and turn talking. Number three, assume positive intent and being mindful of your own assumptions. Number four, ask questions, don't get defensive. I found this approach, especially in my personal and professional relationships, help to hold people accountable, redirect them when they get defensive and just want to debate, and let people sit in their discomfort. I like that a lot.
That I appreciate that. That's really helpful. So did they see you as a natural disciplinarian because of your presentation? I'm glad you brought that up. I think that at the end of the day, it's a little bit deeper than that. I think that if you think about historically speaking, like we're the help. That's what we're supposed to do, right? That is honestly how I felt, right? I am the help to get the kids back to regular, right? I think it had less to do with me being a presenting a mask, female. I think that was more of like the intimidation factor. That was more of like, I think that my sexuality and presentation was more of a barrier with my boss, right? Because of the way that he saw me as a admin with the clothes that I was supposed to wear, the way that I'm supposed to carry myself. I think that oftentimes because I'm very sure of myself, right, I can come off a little abrasive until you get to know me, right? So I don't think that it was that it made me a natural disciplinarian based off my presentation. I think that's more of how I carry myself. And unfortunately, originally, April and I were workshopping the title that I was going to have for that particular job, right? I didn't like counselor. I didn't like student this or student that, right? Like I wanted to be able to redefine what behavioral support meant, right? I didn't want to just be called when the kids are being bad. I wanted to be called when they're being good too, right? But I think at the end of the day, with the way that I'm able to engage with young people, I just became their saving grace for what they needed. So I
And
hope that
then
helps answer your question.
and then it was interesting too because Jaylin would get called to the class to help, and she would get them back, redirect the students, and do tasks that would work. And then she would have team meetings with the staff, and they'd be like, "Oh no, I don't want to do it this way." But then it's like, "But then why are you calling her to your classroom then?" So it's like they didn't trust her, but they trusted her at the same time. It was a really weird dynamic.
Um, there's a question on there that says, "Have you found senior BIPOC to be supportive to you in the workforce? And if so, what ways were they most helpful to you as a young professional?" So I would say, yeah, like there's a lot of BIPOC people that are supportive, but unfortunately, like you're one of many in these organizations right across the way that it's just you, like a little sprinkle, right? I think that I'm really blessed now because the current organization that I work for at the Rape Crisis Center, on my full job, like full-time job, my direct supervisor is a woman of color. And then my big boss, right, is another woman of color. And that has been really, really empowering for me because they trust me. They know that I'm supposed to be here. I would say one thing I really, really struggle with as a young professional, right, being in these higher level positions is, I'm constantly like, dang, do I even belong at this table, right? Like I'm constantly being like, you're so young, you don't know what you're talking about, this and that. I think at the end of the day, what I have found the most helpful as a young professional is understanding that I am at this table for a reason. And at the end of the day, you must just be jealous that I'm here sooner than you made it here. I'm not sure, right? And then at the end of the day, something that was really helpful too from a more senior BIPOC professional was I need to just be unapologetically myself. I need to take up space and I need to never put myself into, that constricted box, right? Oftentimes in the social work realm, we see that Black women, Black social workers are in this box, right? And we have to contort ourselves into a way that's uncomfortable to make others feel comfortable. We got to break out of that box and take up space, right? Stay unmuted and unapologetically to yourself because at the end of the day, if you hold a position, you are supposed to be in that position. There's a reason why you got that position in the first place. So those are some of the things that I have felt have been really helpful for me as a young professional.
But the ironic thing is that our boss at Winger was a black man. Plot twist. Um, Thank you both for being here today, being vulnerable and sharing your experience. I'm often mindful of how I respond in these heightened situations to prevent the quote unquote angry black woman trope. Yep. It's exhausting. I'm a huge advocate of black woman tears. You can cry, I can cry too. Thank you, April and Jaylin. I appreciate your openness and honesty. Your willingness to leave a space that doesn't support your mental wellness is brave and admirable. Your actions are so foreign in a society where people stay in spaces that kill them to secure the bag. That bag don't matter if you're dead. That is true. Thank you both for sharing your experiences. I'm happy you both moved on from a toxic school environment, but also sad that our schools continue to lose our wonderful BIPOC teachers and staff. And the students then miss out on having that representation and connection. Do you have an advice or cheat codes for supporting our schools? We're actually doing a conference in a couple weeks in the Dells with the Wisconsin Head Start Association, and we have a different whole different presentation that we're doing for them on connecting with families of color and kids of color. So we have a whole different session set up for that, more than we can talk about in the next few minutes. But yeah, we do. So we can talk offline if you're interested in that. Such an affirming presentation. Thank you. Thank you both for sharing your experience. Can we watch the front on YouTube? Oh, that's probably for the admin. Where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be. This country has shown over and over it's willing to accept mediocrity from majority culture, but refuses to accept excellence from our Black and brown folks. Take the table and make it yours. Yes. I don't know if I missed any.
No, I don't. I don't think so. Any other questions, comments?
No. Well, we really appreciate you all and your interactions and you all being in the space with us today, spending your lunch hour with us. We hope you enjoyed our presentation. We enjoyed connecting with you all. Hopefully, we will connect again in another space, hopefully in person. Feel free to connect with us. You can find us, on Facebook, or you can Google us. Jaylin's going to put up the screen that has our email addresses if you'd like to reach out to us via email. Um, yeah, so it was fun. Jaylin, do you have anything else to add?
No, not really. I mean, those of you who need 5 minutes of your life back, feel free to get those 5 minutes back. Zoom conferences are always kind of long. I just sincerely appreciate every single person who was in here. I appreciate those of you who were brave and said something in the chat about your own experiences and provided your own experience and stuff like that. Thank you so much for being here. That's really all I got to say. Appreciate y'all.
All right. Well, Lucretia's here.
Hey, box number
Hey,
two.
Lucretia.
Well, thank you both. Just in closing, I would like to say a few things. Many thanks to Jaylin and April for sharing your time, experiences, expertise, and valuable information with us today. And thank you for being so open and honest during today's conversation. I know these topics are not always easy to discuss. And thank you to everyone in attendance for being a part of this event and for your commitment and efforts to confront racial injustice. Please watch for an email with a link to complete an evaluation on today's presentation, and watch for a separate email regarding CEUs for those that requested them when you registered. And finally, please see our website for information on our closing plenary, which begins at 2 o'clock p.m. Central on YouTube today. And thank you again for joining us. I hope you all enjoy your weekend.